can go sideways in an instant. What's here today can be gone tomorrow. We live in a world full of uncertainty. Are you ready to survive? This is the Weathered Soul.
Hey, how you doing? This is AKA the Weathered Soul, Bruce McGee here on the Weathered Soul. As you can see that I have not been calling it the Weathered Soul Podcast because we are not the Weathered Soul Podcast anymore. We are a brand now. We are called the Weathered Soul. And I just want to welcome you here to episode 0 of the Weathered Soul. Now, what is the Weathered Soul and who am I about and what am I about? Well, if you're still subscribed to my YouTube channel that used to be the Weathered Soul Podcast or used to be WSLN, it is not called WSLN anymore. It's called Weathered Soul. This is the brand that I made a long time ago and that I've always wanted to propagate through the social medias and through the YouTubes and things like that. And we have totally revamped the podcast. So you're going to get a whole different sound, a whole different take on life as I see it through the eyes of who I am, Bruce, AKA the Weathered Soul. Now, if you're looking for Dougie, my old co-host, he's still around. He's not going to be gone forever. He is always going to be one of the co-hosts. And when I say one of the co-hosts, we're going to have a dozen of different topics. So from anywhere from being a damn Yankee, which Doug will be here if we're talking about damn Yankee stuff, to Bitcoin, where I will have a heavy presence on Bitcoin, and whether we have any kind of homesteading stuff, some urban farming, because what this podcast is going to be about, it's going to be about homesteading, and homesteading is a big issue right now. And if you're going out there and you're looking at any of the homesteading type sites or any of the homesteading type situations that we have going on the interweb right now, what you know right now is that all the homesteading sites happen to be in kind of like a rural type situation. Well, I don't live in the rural type situation. What I live in is I live into the real. And what I want to do is I live here in Gilroy, California. And Gilroy, California is a bedroom suburb community. Yes, it's out in the rural country, but I do not live on a real rural part of land. I live in a tract home. And when I'm telling you I live on a tract home, my home is on like 6,500 square feet of lot where I've got a 1,500 square foot yard. Most of my backyard is dedicated to gardens and gardening and doing things like that. And let me tell you, it's taken me a long time to get the knowledge that I have about gardening, about doing certain things out in the yard to do kind of organic gardening stuff. But homesteading goes a whole lot more further than that. And one of my influences is Jack Spurko, who produces the Survival Podcast, and he's just been a great big influence. Another one of my influences is Jason Stapleton from the Jason Stapleton Network, the Nomad Network, and you'll be seeing a lot of guests and people coming through this podcast that are involved in the Nomad Network. And there's just all kinds of things that we need to do as a country, as a people, as a community, as you, the breadwinner or the person in your family that gets things done. All these things need to be done in a homesteading type environment, because believe me, this world, no matter how you think about it, whether you're left, right, center, gay, straight, black, yellow, Asian, Mexican, whatever. I mean, what's going on in this world now is a shame. What's going on with what is happening in this world is kind of scary. And really, we can't vote ourselves something that we've voted ourselves into for decades and decades and hundreds of years. So what it comes down to is that you have to take things upon yourself and do things the way that you think that you should do them with the knowledge that you're getting from all these homesteading channels. And I'm hoping that I can insert some of my homesteading skills, some of my experience in life, some of my experiences that I've gone through in the past, probably 12, 15 years that I've been doing some type of homesteading, and hopefully that we can be able to trade ideas, have discussions, and get a little deeper into things that are more attuned to self-sufficiency and self-reliance and self-responsibility, because I'm big time in that right now. And I think it's just really one of those things that you have to have a grasp on. So another one of these things that we have to be attuned at, and you're going to hear a lot of here, is you're going to hear a lot about Bitcoin. And I'm not talking about cryptocurrency. I'm talking about Bitcoin, because I think Bitcoin is going to be the thing that's coming up that's going to not save us, but I mean, for those of you that are out there that are Bitcoiners or hodlers, or whether they're traders, or whether they're true Bitcoin maximalists, we're going to be talking a lot about Bitcoin, because I think it's extremely important right now. The price is right. Those of you to think that Bitcoin is way too high and that you've missed the boat, you haven't missed the boat. We're talking about Bitcoin, and that type of blockchain is very, very young. And those of you to think that it's crashing and it's going down to the bottom, well, I just don't know where your sweet spot is. Where do you find your sweet spot? Because basically the time of your inflated currency, I mean, look, we're going through some of the most unprecedented times as far as inflation has ever been. It's crazy. In fact, you can catch me on Twitter at also known as TWS, and I hang out there a lot. I've been listening to this one guy, Kim Dodem, and he actually put out a thread today that is very important. I want to share it with you real quick, and then we're going to end this up, because this is just episode 0. I wanted to give you a taste on what's going on with this Weathered Soul program that we got going on. But here's what Kim Dodem said. He said, this may be the most important thread I ever make, the big picture stuff about major global collapse that is coming. I will try to help you understand why the future is not what we were hoping for. It's worse than most can imagine. Our leaders know, but what are they planning? So the United States did not have a surplus or a balanced budget since 2001. In the last 50 years, the U.S. only had 4 years of profit. In fact, all that profit the U.S. had would not be enough to pay for 6 months of the current yearly deficit. So how did the U.S. pay for things? The U.S. spending and debt has spiraled out of control, and government can only raise the money it needs by printing it. Then that causes inflation. It's like taxing you extra because you pay for more of the things like you need, and all your assets decline in value. The reason why the U.S. got away with it for so long is because the U.S. dollar is the world's reserve currency. Nations everywhere hold the U.S. dollar as secure assets. So when the U.S. government prints trillions, it's robbing the Americans and the entire world. It's the biggest theft in history. The problem is that it's been going on for decades, and there is now no way to fix it. The reality is that the U.S. has been bankrupt for some time, and it's been coming, and it's going to be a nightmare. Mass poverty and a new system of control. Let me explain why this is just not gloom and doom talk. The total U.S. deficit at this time is $90 trillion. U.S. unfunded liabilities are $169 trillion. Combined, that's $778,000 per U.S. citizen, or $2,067,000 per U.S. taxpayer. Remember, the only way the U.S. government can operate is now by printing more money. Your taxes mean nothing, which means hyperinflation is inevitable. The total value of all companies listed on the U.S. stock market is $53 trillion. The real value is much lower because the U.S. is printing trillions of dollars to provide interest-free loans to investment banks to pump up the stock market. It's a scam. So most of that 53 trillion is just air. That's all it is. The value of all U.S. assets combined, every piece of land, real estate, all savings, all companies, everything that all citizens, businesses, and entities and the state owns is worth $193 trillion. That number is also full of air, just like the U.S. stock market. So let's do the math right here, okay? So the U.S. total debt is 90 trillion. The U.S. unfunded liabilities is 169 trillion. That's a total of 259 trillion. Minus all the U.S. assets, that's 193 trillion. That balance is 63 or 66 trillion dollars. That's 66 trillion dollars of debt and liabilities after every asset in the U.S. has been sold off. Do you understand? Do I need to explain it anymore? So even if the U.S. could sell all its assets at the current value, which is impossible, it would still be broke. The U.S. is beyond bankrupt. The patient is already dead, and this patient is now a zombie. And you probably wonder why things are still going. Why didn't everything collapse yet? It's all perception, denial, and dependency. The perception that the U.S. has the largest economy and the strongest military in the world, but in reality, the U.S. is broke and can't even afford its army. The denial that all nations depend on a strong U.S. dollar or global markets collapse. The reason why the U.S. zombie keeps going is because at the end of the U.S. At the end of the U.S. is the end of the world, the Western prosperity, and an admission that the current system failed as a model for the world. And it doesn't change the reality. The collapse is inevitable and coming. So, what are our leaders planning? You may have heard about the Great Reset, the New World Order. It is a controlled demolition of the global markets, economies, and the world as we know it. A shift into a new dystopian future where the elites are the masters of the slaves without the cosmetics of democracy. Without a controlled demolition of the world will collapse for all, including the elites. The world has changed so much and nothing seems to make sense anymore. The blatant corruption is in the open, the obvious propaganda throughout the media, and the erosion of our rights. What is the end game? So I painted, or Kim.com, who's on Twitter, has painted a really, really ugly picture of what's going on in the U.S. And I got to tell you, when you look at it that way, there's not a whole lot that we can do about it. There's not a whole lot as a nation. We can't vote ourselves out of it. We can't shoot our way out of it. We can't war our way out of it. We can't do any of those things that we once maybe would have been able to do if we would have bit the bullet way back in the 70s or even in the 60s. But greed and politicians have gone on, and all kinds of other situations that we've gotten ourselves in and out of have contributed to this situation on a day-to-day basis. So what are we supposed to do? Well, there's not a damn thing you can do about this to the world, the federal government, or even your state government. The best thing you could do is start doing some things for yourself, making yourself self-reliant and have some personal responsibility and be self-sustainable. And the only thing that you can do that is to start doing what they call homesteading. So that's what this whole thing is going to be about. I'm going to come on here every week or every 2 weeks, and I'm going to be, kind of spouting off the news, but it's news that really I don't have much of an opinion on. I mean, I will have my opinion. The reality of it is that there's not a whole lot that you can do. All you can do is sit there and you can sulk at it and you can look at it and you can be mad about it and you can yell about it and you can do all kinds of other things about it. But what I'm going to teach you is going to help you save yourself, help you get yourself in this position where you could be more self-reliant, you could be self-responsible for yourself, and that you can sustain at least a little bit of your life through what you have in your little homestead, in your little area that you own or that you rent or anything. I mean, I started my gardening, and I talk a lot. I'm going to talk a lot about gardening here, but I started my gardening probably 20 years ago on a balcony in a condo. That's where I started learning how to plant a seed, how to cultivate a seed, how to make a tomato, how to make, how to get all those things out of the earth, out of the containers that I was doing things in. And through those years, as I grew out of the condo and I bought a home on a piece of land, I learned how to work that land. And those are some of the things that I'm going to teach you. I'm going to teach you how to do composting. I'm going to teach you how to build stuff. I'm going to teach you and give you the opportunity to get plans from me on able to do things. I'm going to direct you to other podcasts like Jack Spurko, the survival podcast, or Jason Stapleton show, or Lands of Liberty. I'm going to do all those things for you and give you those links and all those things that will make somebody at least successful in doing something for themselves and being self-reliant for themselves. And only when you can be self-reliant for yourselves and be sustainable for yourselves, then you can move that into your community. And that's another thing that Bitcoin takes care of. It's another thing that you're self-reliant. It's another thing that when you're growing food and you have so much food, you're going to be able to trade that food for other things. Because, if Ken.com is true to his word, true to his opinion, then things are going to become very expensive. They're going to become very rare. And, people are going to be either ready to trade with you, or you're going to have to be ready to defend yourself to keep what you have. We're going to talk about self-protection here. We're going to talk about those nasty things, those nasty words called guns, because I'm a believer in the Second Amendment. And I believe that our rights should not be infringed to have any type of weapon in our possession to be able to either go out and hunt or protect your family and your property. Because as we saw over in Uvalde, Texas, that the cops are not going to do that. The police officers aren't going to do that. And I don't give a bad rap to the police department, but a lot of them in this last couple of weeks have just proved themselves just unreliable. I mean, let's be honest. But there's a lot of good cops out there, and there's a lot of good departments out there. But the problem is that there's not enough, and we've gotten away from these things that we've seen over and over and over. So I hope that you will join me in bringing in this new show that I have called The Weathered Soul. And I want to thank everybody who's got this launch, that helped me out with this launch, like Jason Stapleton, like Jack Spirko, like Mark Clare from the Lions of the Liberty. I've got millions of people to thank. But basically, I want to thank you guys for, number one, subscribing to the channel. Those of you that have subscribed to the channel already, thank you guys for doing that. I am back. We are going to be doing a weekly or semi-weekly podcast, and I want you guys to tune in because I've got all kinds of good information, pertinent information that you guys are going to need going forward through whatever we're going to go through. And let me tell you, it's better to be prepared for something that might happen and not have it happen, and then be prepared for it. I'm serious, because yesterday was the best day to get these things done, but today's another opportunity. So don't let that opportunity slip by. My name is Bruce McGee, also known as TWS, aka The Weathered Soul. You can grab me over here on Twitter. You can subscribe to the podcast just by going up and clicking that subscribe button and get reminded every time that the Weathered Soul gets in here. And I am just going to be excited for you guys to tune. I thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for tuning in. And I'll see you next time that we get together on The Weathered Soul. For best results, squeeze from the bottom up.